So Nathan, we've talked a lot about policy, big ideas about infrastructure, planning, energy. What we know is that the opportunities are there to grow the economy, green the economy. We have to do it fast. Ultimately, this is a political thing now, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to have to transform our political process so we get the policies we want.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of already in process. We've seen that upsurge in voter registration that happened in 2018, a big push for getting the right people in for the right reasons. I'm most supportive and impressed by Ro Khanna. He's been making some great progress at the federal level, but a lot of the groups on both sides of the border, I think, because we can't just talk about Democratic. I think on the Republican side, there's been a lot of progress, at least on getting people that can come in, and there has been independence. I'm most impressed with the Native women that were elected to the federal level too. Our first Native Americans at the political level. That's really impressive, and that's a great precedence that we need to continue. But all across the board, right? Getting people of color, getting people of different backgrounds and age gaps. It's no longer a old white man game.
Yeah. Right. I mean, our politics needs to represent our demographics, and clearly we don't have that as a country. You look at Congress, you look at the composition, it does not reflect the diversity of our country. And more, it doesn't reflect the diversity of what we need going forward, right? If you want to look at who really sets policy, look at who funds our candidates. Mm-hmm. And, even in California, and I say this as somebody who's a registered Democrat, you look at the corporations that are funding Democrats, these are not entities that you would want setting policy. And they're setting policy in the halls of Sacramento. They've got full-time lobbyists, and the interests that they have are not aligned with the kinds of things we talked about. They're not aligned with clean air. They're not aligned with investments in housing that working class people can afford. They're not aligned in us taking back our public resources and saying, what is the best return on the dollar based on the criteria that's going to have, clean air, reliable grid, low cost for the taxpayer? They want profit, and I get that. That's fine. But if they want to participate in the market in a fair way, that's one thing. But if they're deploying their capital to influence politicians, and we know that's what happens, that's not the market working. That's influence that's changing the future for my kids for short-term profit, and I'm not okay with that.
So why don't you tell me and everybody why you're running for the 78th district in California?
Yeah, well, I was not somebody who set out in life wanting to be a politician. I'm a small business owner. I've been working with nonprofits. I had a lot of flexibility, a good lifestyle, but I started to get deeper and deeper into the political advocacy arena, and I started looking at why certain policies were and weren't getting advanced. And it had nothing to do with the things that we've talked about. It had nothing to do with what was economically feasible. It had nothing to do with what the public wanted. It just had to do with which powerful political entities were dictating the terms. And unfortunately, there's not a lot in the middle between a special interest fueled politics and a people powered politics. We as a society, we know what we have to do, and we're actually out in front of most of our elected officials. So I'm running because communities deserve to have somebody who goes to Sacramento to advance the policies that they want, that their neighbors want, that their families want for their kids, and not what some special interest that happens to have $1 million to shell out to different candidates. That's not what democracy is supposed to be. And the only way that you can really convey that to people and have them know that it's real is to be rooted in community, to do what I'm doing, which is reject all corporate money, all PAC money, all special interest money. It's a hard path, but to do the things you need to do once you're elected, it's going to be hard. And if you don't have the courage to reject that money as a candidate, we know you're not going to have the courage to do what you need to do once you're elected.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think to that message, really, there's a lot of power in just the political process itself. Everybody's been disenfranchised, and I know I was, right? I started out in high school. I don't want to age myself, like I feel old now, but I wasn't at the voting age when Al Gore and President Bush were facing off, and my family was on the red side, and I was like, let's go, right? And then everything seemed a little bit unfair, right? And I kind of, at that point, started questioning the political system, right? For a long time in my history, I was disenfranchised. And I could talk for a lot of people that feel like their vote doesn't count anymore. You see the policies that are set, and you see the motives behind them now. That veil has lifted to the point that it is an inspiration to see how change happens, and how change happens is at the ballot box.
Right.
Every vote that is cast does count. Although people are trying to tell you that it doesn't, people are trying to tell you why that you shouldn't vote, or they're going to try and mess with your voting rolls. You just have to be proactive to know that you're registered, to get registered if you're not, to get people excited about the possibility of voting, right? It's not something that we need to take lightly. It's our only responsibility. A lot of people around the world don't have that opportunity. They're suffering under governments because they don't have a say.
Right.
We have that great opportunity and that great responsibility to make our votes count.
Yeah. Well, and look, a lot of young people, they are fed up, right? They look at the system, they look at the future that's coming, and they say, the system is rigged, why participate? And what I've learned as somebody who went from being sort of a non-political person who was just focused on policy and substance, and then sort of waded deeper into the swamp, is that I'll speak for my district, there are a lot of young people. If young people vote, the game changes like that. I mean, the numbers are in, when I say our favor, the numbers favor the shift away from the old way of doing it. And so folks, younger people, folks that are independent, if folks vote, we turn the game overnight. I mean, that's the reality. The numbers are in our favor. It's interesting. The fastest growing party in California, well, I know for certain in San Diego, and I think in the state as a whole, is no party, because people are so fed up with this sort of small-minded partisan way of doing business. And I think part of what's cool about our conversation today is we're talking about big ideas. We're putting the policy first, and we're saying the politics that are going to get us to this kind of policy environment are going to be the politics of people, and they're going to be the politics of youth, and they're going to be the politics of doing what we know is going to improve our quality of life right now and give our kids a livable future. And we can do it.
Well, and the big question is, do you believe the person that's talking to you? That's always the biggest discussion, is what is your record, right? And I mean, that is something that I think this generation is starting to do. We're starting to do research, right? Think of it like you're doing a paper, right? Think of it like you are actually making an informed decision. And how do you do that, right? You're going to go look at their voting record, or one of my favorite candidates, you're going to look at his past YouTube videos for the past 40 years, right? And see the consistency and see a genuine personality.
Yeah. You brought up this point about how do you vet a candidate, and most people, they've got busy lives. They're not spending their time checking every statement every candidate has made. But what I'll say is, one thing is, who funds a candidate? That's a very telling thing. If you're not capable of looking at an industry and saying, I think this industry, their motives, based on what kind of legislation they're pushing, right, in the halls of City Hall or Sacramento, if there's an industry that is trying to, pull money out of working families, is that an industry you want to take money from? I mean, I never would, but I know there are candidates that do, and they get away with it because the public's not paying attention. And I think what we're seeing with younger people now is they're basically saying, and I think a lot of this has to do with technology, they're fed up. If they believe in a candidate, they'll share that candidate's information. They'll chip in a buck, and that's the new model of politics. And I think
it's very easy to listen to somebody and be skeptical. That's what everybody does at the first onset. You hear somebody talking, you want to see if they're actually telling the truth, because nobody wants to be involved or even support somebody with a simple thing as a vote or a dollar if they don't believe in what you're saying. And truth is very important in this age of lies. Talking to one particular person, this age of disinformation is toxic, right? Information should be truthful, should be shared, and we're here, and I'm here to support Micah and his conquest, or his opportunity to involve the public in a comprehensive partnership.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and I said it very clearly. I mean, this campaign, it's a people's campaign, right? I'm only going to win if people decide that they want to have a kind of policy that reflects their needs and their desires, and not the desires of the folks that are currently funding our existing system. I mean, I'm a dad. This is not this is not a quality of life improvement for me. I've got kids who I'm not at home with certain nights because I'm out, chatting with community members, but that is meaningful and that is important. And I'm fortunate enough that I have the background in terms of education and policy and the work I've done with nonprofits where, I have a lot of insight into a lot of issues that your average person doesn't have. And I feel that I have to use that privilege to contribute. And so this is how I see that I can contribute. But ultimately, I'm a vessel of a larger movement, and we're seeing it at all different levels, and we need to see it in Sacramento.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention quickly, when we met, I actually had brought my oldest son because he had the day off to the climate strike downtown, Fridays for Future and the global climate strike. And it was such an impressive show of youth standing up and really giving their voices to something that they don't have any control of, but they're taking control of. And that was such an important thing. That's why I founded my company. That's why I do what I do with a passion, is because once you find that you have a voice and you have a way to get that voice heard and implemented, then there's nothing that can stop you. And that's what's really telling to this next voting cycle, to this next decade.
Yeah.
We've just started a new decade. This is how we make progress, and it happens at the ground roots level to demand a better way.
Yeah. One thing I want to say to young people out there, look, there's kids they're 8 years old, they're 10 years old, they can't vote. If you're 18 years old, you just got the key to the castle. So show up, vote, have your friends vote. The political machine will not respond to you unless you turn out to vote. And that's the truth. And so you guys have the numbers, the future you want to see, just grab it. We're here to listen, be that representation, but you guys need to grab it.
And talk to your parents about policy and politics, right? Force the issue on them, because they're really your sounding board, and they are going to vote in your best interest too, and they are going to support policies that affect you once you can talk to them and be realists. Because a lot of people are fed disinformation, right? Bring the information to them, give them a little PowerPoint presentation, make it fun, and really just try and tell the truth and make it exciting. I never was in that kind of arena to make politics exciting because it was so drab. But I find myself watching all of the hearings at the Capitol, from Facebook getting grilled, which was very entertaining, to impeachment trials, which are also very entertaining, to anything and everything. But getting engaged is the most important part, and getting educated. That really sets the tone for the rest of your life, right? Or else they're going to tell you what your policy is. So.
Right.
I guess that's it for today.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll bring this back up with a new episode and keep the discussion going.
Thanks for tuning in.